Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Lore by Daylight. If you're not familiar with the concept, I show a bunch of gameplay clips and I talk about each killer's or survivor's life story and kind of let you in on what they're like as a person, what their life was like before they got taken by the entity into the fog, and any interesting facts or theories that you might have not known about. Today we'll be talking about the Hillbilly, aka Max Thompson Jr. Of course, we're all familiar with the Hillbilly, but are we all familiar with the way that the Hillbilly grew up and how he got into the fog? Maybe not. Hillbilly was released together with the game in 2016, and he came with three perks: Enduring, Lightborn, and Tinkerer. Enduring makes him very resistant to pain, which means that if you pallet stun a hillbilly with Enduring, he's not really going to be affected by it. He's just built different. As for Lightborn, he's immune to any sort of light, so flashlights are not really going to work on him. As for Tinkerer, the Tinkerer name comes from him being a literal tinkerer, aka making his own weapons, including his chainsaw, which he put together by himself and handcrafted it. Billy, aka Max, was born to very excited parents in the US. They were excited to have a baby, they were very happy to lead the whole family life because they owned a farm, they had a whole bunch of land, and they were just excited to, get into the chapter of life with a brand new baby. However, that excitement went away pretty quickly when they saw that Billy was born disfigured, with his face connected to his shoulder. He had cysts all over his body, and he generally looked very deformed, which kind of scared them. Later on, it was also shown or found out that Billy was unable to speak, so he wasn't able to communicate, and they kind of deemed it like, oh, okay, so not only did we get a disfigured baby, he also can't speak. We can't communicate with him in any way, and their conclusion to all that was that they have to hide him. They were extremely embarrassed of Billy, and they didn't want anybody knowing that Billy is basically their creation. So, because of the embarrassment that his parents felt, and their parents' names were Max and Evelyn Thompson, they locked him in a shed on their land. It was a very small shed. If I would have to guess, I would say that maybe the shed was like 4x4 big. Really nothing, nothing fancy. And they would give him food via a little hole in the wall. And let's just say that the food was not like great culinary or anything. It was just like mostly scraps and stuff that they had to throw out anyway. Not only that, like the food aspect, but they generally made fun of him all the time. They mentally abused Billy, and I would like to say that they also physically abused him, but I don't really have any proof of that. But considering how much pain that is indicated that Billy withstood, I'm guessing that it's very possible. While Billy was in his little shed, he spent a lot of his time handcrafting certain things. He kept tinkering with his little tools that he had available to him, and he made all sorts of weapons. Hammers, pickaxes, anything that he could really try and make, he did. And he was actually pretty good at it. He was very handy and knew what he was doing to make the weapons and tools functional and not have them fall apart, which I'm gonna be so for real, I couldn't. I'm not a handy person. Billy often overheard his parents talking, which wasn't just in between his parents, like between Max and Evelyn. It was also between the chief of police in their little town, because his dad was very familiar with them and he was actually like buddies with the chief. The chief often came over, they had a few drinks, they had some cigars, you know how it be. And Billy sometimes overheard conversations. He was a really good listener and he was very attentive actually. and he was able to overhear that his dad and the chief of police were involved in some sort of a money laundering scheme. As for Billy's knowledge, he didn't really know what money laundering is. He actually didn't even call it money laundering, he called it money washing, so that was really confusing for him. But later on, throughout reading through the lore, it became clear to me that Billy meant money laundering. Aside from the chief and his father hanging around the shed and everything, they also did worse things, which included them making fun of Billy and making Billy do things for their own entertainment. We're actually talking about them making Billy kill and slaughter certain animals. I don't have any details as to what kind of animals or how many, how often, but I'm guessing it was quite a lot because there came a point where Billy was kind of tired of it and he was not having it anymore, in which he looked for a little spot of weakness. He throws the chief and his dad away. He kills his dad with the weapons that he has instead of continuing slaughtering all those animals. He injures the chief of police and starts to run. The chief follows him. Generally, all the policemen follow him that were around at the time, and the chief obviously called for backup. Billy makes it through the woods. I'm pretty sure that he reached some sort of a different farmhouse where he disembowels the chief of police with. I'm not sure what he had. I'm guessing it was a pickaxe or something like that. And basically feeds the chief to farm animals, mostly pigs. After this, Billy runs away with his chainsaw. He lives on the land for a little bit. He farms animals, but he wasn't exactly good at. He wasn't exactly good at handling animals, but he needed to eat, and he hunted for food, and he was just kind of living on his own. And considering that his parents actually never gave him a name, he named himself Max Thompson Jr., aka after his father, just Junior. And he was actually happy because he was free. It's never actually shown or told what happened to his parents' bodies. However, there is an investigation after the whole situation takes place, which is when Billy most likely gets taken by the entity to grant him the freedom of, you know, being able to be in the realm and do his own stuff. Because if the entity hadn't taken him, he would have been taken by the police probably, and either would have gotten the death penalty or he would have been serving a sentence in prison or in a mental institution of some sort. The police never finds any human remains, so Billy's parents' bodies were never found, nor the police bodies. Nothing is ever found. The only remains that they found were animal. I'm guessing due to Billy's rage, due to Billy's hunting, everything around that. It's probably why. The land where the farmhouse was located gets split off and sold off to different people because nobody actually wanted the whole land in peace, including with the farmhouse. There was a rumor that people still hear Billy's chainsaw in the night, so that's why nobody really wanted it. It had a pretty bad reputation, but eventually it does get sold off, and now Billy is in the realm with us. He is actually quite happy to be in the realm, unlike some others, because he does have the freedom to get his rage out and kill survivors, as we know him now. Yeah, so the entity actually didn't have to do a lot of convincing with Billy, unlike with, for example, Trapper. As for some fun facts and theories about Billy, I actually have written some things down because I found them really interesting. He is actually pretty bright, but unfortunately he was just never given a chance. If you're familiar with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise, you also probably know the similarities. with Billy and Bubba, aka the cannibal. They have pretty similar upbringings, pretty similar stories. I'll get into that a little bit later because we do have Bubba slowly but surely upcoming in the lore series. Yeah, there are some similarities. So if you are familiar with it, you may have noticed. I've talked about this theory before in Meg's video, but I'm gonna mention it again since it does tie to Billy. Um, there is a theory that Meg and Billy might be related in some sort of parallel universe or in some sort of timeline because of the similarities in their perks, aka Meg having adrenaline, Billy having enduring, like they both have that last kick and they're strong, and everything. Them being stealthy, aka Kieran Tinker and Meg's quick and quiet perk, and their last names. I guess that would be worth mentioning. They're not the same, don't get me wrong, but Thomas, Thompson, I guess maybe in some timeline they could be related, but it's pretty far fetched. Like, take it with a grain of salt. Another theory is that the toolboxes that we have in game that survivors are able to use were originally the Hillbillies. Why? Well, because he's a tinker, he handcrafts stuff, and since he didn't have a lot to work with, that's why the toolboxes are depleted. That's why they're not like that strong, right? That's why you're not able to do all kinds of things with them. So that is a theory that they may have belonged to the hillbilly at some point. There is actually some flavor text that indicates to it. I'm not sure if I'll find it. If so, then you see it currently on the screen. Yeah, I guess that's where I would call it a day. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. This is kind of new compared to what I did before with my lore videos, because before I went by a fully written off script that I was reading off of. Like, I wrote down the entire story with how I would say it. But now, instead, I just wrote up some basic info. I wrote up a timeline and I wrote up some facts without me actually reading off of it. I just have notes. So I'm just kind of talking about it how I have it in my head and how I've learned it over the past few weeks. If this is preferred to you, I would really like to know if you've enjoyed this kind of concept more, like me just kind of yapping, because that's what I do, right? So if you enjoyed this more than the previous videos, I would really appreciate you letting me know down below. However, if you didn't enjoy this concept that much compared to the previous one, I would also like it for you to let me know, because depending on what you guys enjoy more, I would obviously accommodate to that and maybe find a compromise in case it's like a 50-50. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, everyone. I will be back very soon with yet another episode, and we will be covering Jake Park next. Subscribe if you can, like if you can, comment if you can. I really appreciate all of those, and they are a big help. So have an amazing day, and bye bye, everyone.